So, at some point, you ended up at Oberlin College, Oberlin Conservatory, excuse me, as a jazz major. And that means that at some point you made a decision to not only study music, but to be a musician, or at least try. What was that process of deciding that like?
Actually, my mom was the one who pushed me towards studying music. I was actually going to um, do pre-law. Sometimes I wonder should I have stayed on that course.
That's a whole other interview. The truth about law.
Yeah,
Go on.
right. I wondered. I was thinking about pre-law, and I was and then my mom one day was just like, you know, you have such a passion for music. Maybe that's what you should do. And she was right. Yeah, it was the summer after my junior year that I went of high school that I went to Interlochen. And then I went again the summer after my senior year. I went straight from Interlochen to Oberlin, actually.
Mhm.
Um, you know, but I'm saying all that to say that I got exposed to all these, musicians, from around the country, and they were really good. And of course, for high school. And I felt that I could be competitive and keep up with, that level of musician. And at the time, I mean, I couldn't really play, but you know, the environment made me think I could play.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, everybody sounds sad at like 17 and 18, man. Yeah. I mean, not very many. You got a few guys out there that could really play at 18, but for the most part, most people sound sad, as Winton would say, it sounds sad at 18, 19 years old. But you do have somewhat of a sound and concept of where you want to go.
Yeah, yeah.
So, by my sophomore year, I had began to listen. Started listening to jazz consistently and almost exclusively.
This is high school sophomore year?
This is high school. For whatever reason, I don't know
Mhm.
why. I just kind of, there was a public radio station at the time that played jazz at night.
Oh, you found jazz by yourself. That's very interesting.
Yeah, it was. See, and from my tradition, growing up Pentecostal, specifically in the Church of God in Christ, at the time, the teaching and the belief was any other music besides gospel was sinful, and you couldn't be saved, and play any other music besides church music. That's they taught that at the time.
Yeah.
Some still believe that, but we know that's very archaic and in some regards, for lack of a better word, ignorant. But at the time, for some reason, I heard this music and I just liked how it sounded. Liked how it sounded. So that's just what I got into. And by the time the first time I went to Interlochen after my junior year, I met a guy, and at the time he was really into Miles Davis. Everything was Miles Davis. Of course, I had heard of Miles Davis, but I hadn't really explored his music. But when I started listening to Miles, it just opened up a whole another world. Because here's another thing, Adam. So when Herbie Hancock came up with Rocket, you and I are young teenagers, at the time. Right. That's what we knew of Herbie Hancock at the time. I had no idea of Herbie, Ron, Tony, and Wayne Shorter with Miles. I had no idea about that. I didn't know anything about Nefertiti or ESP or Miles. You know what I'm saying? I had no idea. So it wasn't until, I got into my scene. I was like, wait a minute, whoa. Herbie played with Miles? And when I heard that music and got exposed to that music, it totally changed everything for me. It changed everything for me. I discovered John Coltrane, started discovering McCoy Tyner.
Mm-hmm.
And just really check and Herbie and McCoy are probably my strongest influences overall. Mixed in with a little, Kenny Kirkland, Monk, of course, Bud Powell. But Herbie and McCoy are my strongest influences. And I was just so blown away at the time that these guys can make music and especially Herbie, because all I knew was doom, doom, don't 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 don't. That's all I had no idea, of Riot.
Right.
Okay, or Speak Like a Child. I didn't know that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have to smile a little bit because in the segregated America that these jazz musicians that you cited came up in,
Yeah.
it's almost of a certainty that they grew up in churches that had, if not the same music, similar music to what you had.
Sure.
So these guys, they grew up with this music, and the jazz that they developed contained some of the same elements that you grew up with. You
Yes.
haven't mentioned the fact that you recognized it or that you found it familiar. Are you aware of that now? Maybe you weren't aware of it then, but are you
No, I
really
wasn't aware
surprised
of it.
that you should?
I wasn't aware of that then, Adam. It was just what I was hearing. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously, being older and having, gone to college and studied and now a teacher now. I mean, I get it now. But at the time, nah, man, it was just, and I think this is important. I think this is important for youngsters studying music today. The main reason why I pursued music was one thing. Watch this, because it sounded good. I'm not thinking about chord changes. I'm not thinking about what's happening in the melody line. I'm not analyzing. I'm just and to this day, most of the time when I'm listening to Black American music, it's more so of it just sounds good as opposed to trying to intellectualize or rationalize or bring now. Obviously, we all do that. We've all transcribed some solos. We've all done some deep study. What is Bud Powell doing here? What's Mulgrew Miller doing here? What was Charlie Parker? We've all gone through the Omni book and looked at Parker solos, just
right.
like I look at scores of Stravinsky, or Beethoven, and listen to recordings and looked at the score, and analyzed it. But the point is, I don't think anybody is really aware of it when they're really getting into the meat of it. It's more so of how it makes you feel, which I think is the number one premise of good music. How does it make you feel?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody was listening to James Brown analyzing him. It made them feel good. Now, I know that when James Brown wrote da da bum, 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 Maceo Parker and those guys got that from Miles Davis's So What? So I think it's even like in D minor or whatever, or the first chord is like a D7. So my point is that you're not really thinking about it, but it just sounds good, and I think that is like the biggest quality that great music has in common. That it just sounds good. When I listen to yeah, I'm right now. You know how you have different periods where you're into different. You're into different. Right now, I'm like a Shostakovich like freak. So, yes, I have listened to some of the stuff, and I've said, okay, he did this here, but the main thing is his music just sounds good to me.
I'm going to take you a little further because
okay.
I'm going to see if you agree with me. I don't think it's just that the music sounds good. I think it's that the musicians who wrote or played it wanted it to sound good. They made an effort to make sure, like, especially James Brown band, man, they were working really hard. They were not satisfied to just lay that stuff down. I mean, if they missed anything, James Brown had, cop their pay. Would it's got
literally.
to sound good. If it doesn't sound good, if it ain't funky, get out of my band. They cared about that it sounded good. It wasn't just an accident.
No, it wasn't just an accident, and I think that's hard. That goes into the process of it sounding good.
Yeah,
that's why I'm saying, like, I'm saying from a listening perspective, when the listener is listening, most of the time, they're what. I mean, you probably would, I probably would, but we're also professional conservatory trained musicians. So, we've been kind of programmed to, be somewhat analytical. But I'm just saying, your average ear, when they're hearing James Brown, or Michael Jackson, or Bach, for that matter, the first thing is how does the music make them feel? They're not a part of that process that we kind of undergird in terms of putting into it and making it sound good. They're just the recipients of all the work that we are putting into, the music for it to sound good, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it does. So here we are approaching Oberlin College. Did you have a lot of choices, or was Oberlin Conservatory it?
It was it for me after I visited.
Yeah.
I did have some other choices. MSU was the choice. Michigan State, Berklee College of Music was the choice. I got in there also. I was too scared to move to New York and go to the new school, which it had just opened at that time. Oberlin was somewhat close to home, but I mean, to be honest with you, the main thing that drew me to Oberlin was Dr. Wendell Logan, and of course, you were exposed to him.
Yes.
What a great man! What a great man, and artist and composer, and he made a real impact to me when I first met him. He was just, I mean, and I was aware, of course, Neil Creaky, was our piano teacher, and I hope at some point you just do a whole, show on Neil Creaky, because he was a phenomenal pianist. And but that was really sort of a just bonus for me. Dr. Wendell Logan is the reason why I went to Oberlin. And then, when I went and visited there and auditioned, just to see, and a lot of people, they you kind of have to go to understand, and you're an Oberlin alum, they don't get like the access to Steinway pianos that we had. Oh my gosh, they just, at the con, I mean, it wasn't that crazy.
Yeah, that's what drew me. 200 Steinways.
They don't understand. There's like 300 Steinways. I mean, dude, if you couldn't become a better pianist at Oberlin, then you were just an idiot. Okay, because the resources were insane.
Yeah.
Meeting Dr. Logan, and then of course, there wasn't an internet at the time,
right?
But just from what I had heard about Neil Creaky, I thought that was the place for me.
So what did you gain from Oberlin? What did you get shaken up? Did you get your confidence ripped from you? What happened to you at Oberlin?
No. My confidence was actually boosted. We have you and I have mutual friends there, and I'm very close friends with some of those guys. Today, one in particular, I think he mentioned me to you, and I'm going to mention him now. Isaac Ben Ayala.
Yep, we have an interview with him too.
Isaac was very instrumental in me going to the library and looking at scores and just listening to music, because I mean the music library at Oberlin had such an insane amount of information. I mean,
yeah,
you were there. It was
right.
Just, it's a music lover's heaven, and just the resources in terms of being able. I mean, and if you didn't practice, there was a piano in every dorm. I mean, there was just no excuse not to be at a piano. I mean, it was incredible. So I think I gained a lot of confidence. And the thing that really helped me was that I felt like I belonged in this musical environment, because of all the opportunities. Of course, many of us played in the Oberlin Jazz Ensemble. Then you had, there was a place there. What was it? The Cat and the Cream, I believe.
That's right. That's the coffee house, the Cat. That's right.
Coffee house, the Cat. We would go and we would play little gigs there. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so Oberlin also gave us a lot of just performance opportunity, and Some of my closest friends then are some of my closest friends today. Ben Jaffe, Ethan Graham, Jason Jackson, a fabulous trombonist. I'm actually on his record.
Mhm.
That was one of the later recordings that Roy Hargrove played on.
We interviewed him about that very recording. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on that recording. So, just and then it was like what, a half hour from Cleveland. So by my sophomore year, going into my junior year, I had gotten good enough where, and I think I said this before, my parents didn't have to send me money anymore because I was literally gigging, a couple nights a week, around Cleveland.
Yep. And you had church jobs, if I'm not mistaken.
And I played at some churches, on Sunday morning. So,
Mhm.
I
I don't know how you got up on Sunday mornings. I mean, after what we did on Saturday nights, but
yeah, we definitely did some partying. Yeah. Look, I shall not lie. we definitely were college kids. But it's funny because that was my thing on Sunday. I would go to somebody's church, whether I was playing or not. That was just such a mainstay for me. And every time I visited church, by my second or third time, they'd be like, "Do you want a job here playing the organ on Sunday?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where did you go after Oberlin? What did you do? Did you launch straight into a career?
I did. I came back to Michigan for, I think, a year and a half. And then I moved to New York.
Mm-hmm.
And, New York was a great experience for me. I've thought about, moving back to New York. But it's a different day now. You don't necessarily have to be in New York or Los Angeles to be discovered anymore. And that's because of Facebook and YouTube and, social media. I mean, now you can post a video on Instagram, and if the right people see it, you have a career. So, you don't necessarily have to live in the major cities anymore, to get great gigs or to get great opportunities. But at the time, when I moved to New York was still like the mecca of jazz around the world. And I suppose, we could still say this to a certain extent, although I think that a lot of guys are, comfortable living in other places and just going to New York, from time to time because of social media and because, the game has changed. But yeah, I went to New York and got my butt kicked a lot. And that was great for me. I got my butt kicked a lot in Detroit. You got to, because, in Detroit, I remember one night I was playing at a legendary jazz spot in Detroit called Burt's Marketplace. And the one and only Johnny O'Neill.
Yeah.
Who's from Detroit, came in one night and basically pimp slapped me around the piano. Johnny played so much piano that night that it was humiliating and encouraging at the same time, And I tell the young guys coming up, go to some jam sessions and get your butt kicked around a little bit. Yeah. He got me one night at Smalls in New York too. I had just moved to New York in the early '90s, and I was playing at Smalls one night. I'll never forget. I was playing Stella by Starlight. The guy taps me on the back. He's kind of show you something on this tune. So I'm this young guy, 23, 24, thinking I'm all that. What do you, I'm jamming with, the Roy Hargroves and, guys like that. Somebody comes to 10, I'm like, turn around, and it's Johnny. I was like, oh, yes, Mr. O'Neill, you can show me whatever you want. So that was so humbling, man. But I mean, those experiences are just so valuable because it develops at a musical character within you.
Yeah.
Either you're going to sulk or you're going to go somewhere and practice, which is, that happened with me even here, in the church environment, that it pushed me, to go into the path of mastering my instrument. So that's what I did. I moved to New York and stayed there for a while, came back here permanently in 1998. And I've been back in Michigan, ever since then. When I came back here, I took a break from playing, and I took maybe 4 years off of just not really playing anything but in church on Sunday, and because I just wasn't feeling it anymore. Then all of a sudden, around '07, I went to Detroit because Herbie Hancock was in town at the Detroit Jazz Festival, and I went to go see Herbie. And I went to that same spot where I said Johnny got me. Johnny beat me up at the piano that night, Burt's, and I just sat in with the band. And the guy who was John Douglas, the trumpet player, said, "Dude, who are you working with? Are you playing anyone?" I said, "No." So he just started calling me for gigs, and the rest was history. I just all of a sudden, guys just started calling me. If it's oh my God, Roger's playing again. Man, yeah, man. So. And I've been working consistently, ever since then.
That's great.